Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I am your host Faisal Raza Khan and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir under worst siege since August 5th, 2019. There is no human rights. Indian occupation forces are committing genocide, war crimes and ethnic cleansing. There is complete economic, trade and internet blockade. Indian forces destroying agriculture lands, orchards and all kind of businesses, while issuing millions of domiciles to the non-Kashmiris and settling them, changing Kashmir's identity and demographies. Since August 5th, 2019, India's unilateral and unconstitutional revocation of Article 370 and 35A. After that, there was a complete surge in human rights violations. Indian illegally occupied Kashmir is facing the worst kind of atrocities. Beside that, a toxic triangle emerged of Modi regime, Indian military and its Godi media, working 24/7 in occupied territory to make Kashmir issue controversial, turn it into an issue of terrorism, to label Kashmiris as terrorists, malign Kashmir freedom struggle, Pakistan and its armed forces. Modi regime's nefarious designs, military's brutal tactics and the media's complicity in perpetuating a false narrative against Kashmir and Pakistan. It also intends to create regional instability. India already started using such tools to have more fake encounters and staged cordon and search operations, while India could plan more false flag operations against Pakistan. To discuss this grave situation which is emanating from Delhi, we have in our studios Dr. Awais bin Wasi. He is an Indian affairs expert. Most welcome to you, Dr. Sahab. Thank you very much. And we have Dr. Mujahid Gilani. He is President, Kashmir Youth Forum. Most welcome to you, Mujahid sahab. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Faisal.
And online joining us, Dr. Waseem Ishaque. He is the senior analyst. Most welcome to you, Dr. Sahab. Thank you very much for your time as well. My first question to you, Mujahid Gilani sahab, that Human Rights Watch and its latest report stressed that after India had snatched occupied Kashmir's autonomy, now erasing Kashmir's identity, kept them under siege, Indian occupation forces are committing worst kind of genocide and war crimes. Most of the Kashmiri leaders, activists and journalists are already incarcerated, not only in Kashmir but also outside Kashmir in different jails, particularly in Tihar jail. Kashmiris don't have the right of expression, don't have the right of peaceful assembly. If they do or have any protest, they're termed as terrorists. What kind of hypocrisy is on the part of India right now?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Faisal, for having me. And first of all, apart from before answering your question, I will extend my greatest felicitations to the Pakistani nation, Pakistan state itself, on their Independence Day. And today, the 15th of August, as we understand, is observed as the Black Day all over the world, but not only Kashmiris, but also people who love the people of Kashmir and support the freedom struggle that's ongoing on the ground as well. As far as your question is concerned, Faisal, we must understand that this kind of atrocities that India is carrying out in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is not a new thing. Of course, it has bolstered after 2019, but we have seen these kind of atrocities ever since 1947, be it in any dimension. Highest militarized zone, educational rights violations, health rights violations, even the curbing of the right to freedom of speech, even the curbing of the right to religious freedom. Everything, as we see on the ground, has never been granted to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So today, when we talk about rights, particularly the civic rights or the constitutional rights, we must understand the first and foremost point that the people of Jammu and Kashmir, that the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir do not consider themselves as part of India.
Obviously.
On the other hand, India has always been trumpeting that this part is an integral part of the Indian Dominion or the Indian Union. On the other hand, we must understand that India is compelled to keep more than 1 million forces on the ground to actually proclaim this territory as its own. So from one angle, we see that India has always been saying that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. On the other, we see that in 2019, India actually demoted Jammu and Kashmir from the rank of state to a simple union territory. On one hand, we see that India actually somehow wants FDIs towards the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. But on the other hand, we see that India is essentially curbing the local traders and businessmen over there. So this kind of hypocrisy that is very clear from each and every action of India on the ground makes the Kashmiris believe even more that India is going on strategically towards a very systemized genocide of the Kashmiris, be it physically, as in taking their lives, or be it economically, as in completely eroding the Kashmir economics.
You're absolutely right. Dr. Awais, as Dr. Sahab has said, that about the lives lost in Kashmir. So how do you see and how do you analyze the grave human rights violations going on in illegally occupied territory? As since August 5th, 2019, Indian occupation forces killed at least 9 or 7 innocent Kashmiris, 2,442 injured, 24,004 arrested and jailed in and outside illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. While this year alone, 54 Kashmiri youth have been killed and 2,825 arrested by brutal Indian occupation forces. So how do you see that? Because they are doing complete ethnic cleansing over there. On the other side, they are issuing millions of domiciles. So it means that they are curbing the Kashmiri indigenous population, and on the other hand, they are settling outsiders there.
Yes, as Dr. Gilani Sahab was, painting the plight of Kashmiris and what kind of persecution being meted out to them, I think that we need to trace back this phenomenon since 1947, when India started the usurpation of their political right, and it continued. But this action of unilateral, revocation of Article 370 and downgrading Kashmir into Union territory, this is another dark and bleak chapter in Kashmir's history, which started in 2019, 5th of August. It is full of dichotomies and full of contradictions. For example, that India said that we merged that state to the Indian Union. That means that earlier it was not part of that. Had it been part of that, what was the need to revoke Article 370? So there are some very self-contradictory things which India continued on that. And very important and eye-opener report released by leading 20 Indian individuals, Forum for Human Rights. They made a forum for human rights, and they released, every year a report on the plight of human rights in Jammu and Kashmir. After 2019, the first report came in 2020, then 2021, 22, and recently another report after 5 years they released. And this report was released by these 20 individuals. They are not commoners. They, they are the people that who have been running Indian state. Means they included former Foreign Secretary, Interior Secretary, former Chief Justice of India, Justices of India, and one historian. So if you see the composition of this committee or this Forum for Human Rights, so this speaks volume that how senior people and how responsible they were as far as India is concerned. They say that there is a drastic, their report says that there is a drastic reduction in the in that investment, because the original claim when they revoked that Article 370, Modi said that we are doing it to bring investment into Kashmir. We are doing it to alleviate poverty into that. We are doing it to eradicate the unemployment ratio or to downgrade unemployment ratio in happened. So all these claims, they were debunked in this report. Second thing that they mentioned that is very important is that their local industry, especially their fruit industry, was completely damaged,
Yes.
especially the apple industry. Then saffron industry, that was also damaged. And another reference that they made, that and they have mentioned in the previous report, last year report also, that the ratio of unemployment, instead of decreasing, it increased 21%. In all Indian states, the unemployment ratio is 7%. And in Jammu and Kashmir, the unemployment rate is 21%. And another very unfortunate thing that that has been mentioned in that report is 90,000 people, they become drug addict. So this kind of
Obviously, this is a very grave situation right now, which is there in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, do you not think that the Modi regime is at the footsteps of Israel, deliberately snatched social and life protection, Kashmiris deprived of health, education, residence, agriculture, land and their livelihoods and businesses, millions of domiciles issued to the non-Kashmiris with illegal settlements, changing demographics, and now intense fake operations against Kashmiris by labeling them as terrorists or infiltrators from Pakistan?
Faisal, unfortunately, we are witnessing an era of double standards of great powers and the international institutions. And I can see a lot of similarity between situation in Kashmir and situation in Gaza. Almost identical start, and almost identically they are being occupied, illegally occupied by the powers which are actually not even authorized to do that. But we have seen the double standard of the United States and also the United Nations, whereby they have not been able to implement their own resolutions. So that's why, as the Gaza appeared to be an open prison, Kashmir also appeared to be an open prison. As the world has ignored, or I would say the major powers have ignored largely the Israeli atrocities in Gaza. On the similar way, the great powers, especially the United States and also the Russia, have ignored the Indian atrocities in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The current format of Prime Minister Netanyahu is an ideal format for Prime Minister Modi to implement the same format and same sample for occupying and illegally occupying, further making the lives of the innocent Kashmiris even more difficult. However, there are certain caveats on Prime Minister Modi. He can't do the way it has been done in Gaza. But at least his liberty of action to a large extent has been increased by the evolving situation in Gaza. And the muted response from the great powers and the muted response from the United Nations, unfortunately, has made the situation much more difficult. Now what is happening, it is over-militarization by the Indian occupied forces in Jammu and Kashmir. And on the ratio, I have seen few research, almost one Indian soldier over 2 to 3 innocent civilians of Kashmir, especially in the valley. This is very unfortunate part. And India has still not been able to actually suppress the freedom struggle of Kashmiris. And the current cycle of struggle, which started somewhere in 90s, it's still going on unabated, despite more than 100,000 innocent Kashmiris have been killed and several thousands have been injured. Despite that, they are resolute and they are actually struggling for freedom, and they will get it. Come what may, if Indians vote Article 370 or whatever they do, false flag operations, in the last 30 years, case study design of my research indicates that India has been absolutely unsuccessful in actually freedom struggle. So therefore, I, the Prime Minister Modi, would be trying to replicate.
Okay. Your point well taken. Your point well taken. Gilani sahab, how do you see Delhi's control state investigation agency continuously confiscating properties particularly belongs to Hurriyat leaders or human rights activists and journalists, as just recently SIA grabbed a plot of Mr. Kifayat Rizvi, a journalist activist and affiliated with APHC. His sin was actually involvement in the pro-freedom activities, highlighting Indian atrocities and Hindutva agenda in IIOJK, and advocating for the resolution of Kashmir dispute?
Well, you see, Faisal, we need to, in one way or the other, understand your enemy. And when we understand India, India has been taking every step very strategically and methodically as far as Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Even when you talk about the 5th of August 2019, we understand that all the tourists were evacuated from the valley before the 5th of August. And there was an air of uncertainty during that time. So now, as we see, and whatever India has done after 5th of August 2019 has been very meticulous, taking up all the Hurriyat leaders or people who actually represent the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. They were incarcerated not only inside the state, that is Jammu and Kashmir, but also taken outside it as well. I would quote the names of, for example, Masjid Alam Bhatt Sahab, Shabir Shah Sahab, Asya Andrabi Sahiba, Nahida Nasreen Fahmida Sofi, even Dr. Qasim Faktu, who was incarcerated behind bars for the past 32 years in Jammu, was translocated to Haryana jail. See, what does this mean, or what do they imply, or what do they think they will get out of it? They're putting a pressure on the people, they're putting a pressure on these Hurriyat leaders that one way or the other they would subjugate, they would just simply become submissive to the Indian policies and Indian dominion. This is one target that they wish to achieve. The second thing is that, you see, economics, financial support is very important. Everybody, everyone, every human being in the whole world needs to have food, needs to have water, and needs to feed his family as well. And same goes for Kashmir too. But we understand that the Kashmiris have been so resilient and so resistant that even the apples, the Kashmiri apples, were marked as we want freedom from India. Hum kya chahte azadi. And we have seen that not only on the apples that were exported to India. So for once, we must understand that SIA, by confiscating and proclaiming the property that actually belongs to the Kashmiris on the ground as well, SIA wants to put a pressure on all these people who are still staunch, who are still having a principle and standing against India, no matter how much
No
India
doubt about
has
that.
oppressed
There is
the
no doubt
Kashmiris.
about the Kashmiri resilience, really. But Dr. Awais, what's the motive of Modi military media nexus as India using state-sponsored terrorism in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and in Pakistan as well, but then playing victim card, staging false flag operations, fake encounters in the occupied territory, India interfering in Pakistan's internal affairs? Don't you think that Modi termed as a worst kind of enemy in East?
You know, very much right that Modi regime is least bothered about the sovereignty, international borders. If we see the recent incidents, not only in Pakistan but across the world.
Yes.
In Pakistan, if we particularly talk about this country, so 20 individuals, they got killed. Okay, and India was involved, and it's not any Pakistani media is reporting. It's reported in The Guardian, a
Yes.
credible British newspaper. So 20 individuals, they got killed here on the soil of Pakistan. Secondly, there is a recent documentary released, titled as Infiltrating Australia, India's Secret War.
Yes.
Okay. India requested YouTube to ban it, though YouTube complied it, but globally one can see that what India is doing in Australia.
Obviously.
What happened in Canada, and Canadian Prime Minister said that we have credible evidence of the involvement of the state. There are not non-state actors. So Indian state is involved into that. And then they made another assassinated attempt on, in US soil. So if you see these, the consistent
those,
patterns.
attempts were there in United States,
Exactly.
in United Kingdom.
Yes.
They were involved there in New Zealand. That's why the Five Eyes has given their report
Exactly.
and endorsed that the RAW was involved in that.
Exactly.
No doubt about
Exactly.
that. So, Dr. Waseem, what could be the reason behind the movement of at least 2 battalions of the Assam Rifles from Manipur to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir? Just recently, additional 70 companies of the Central Reserve Police, CPRF, and a provision of 550 ASMI submachine guns to the para commandos in the occupied territory. deployment of 960 highly trained policemen to terrorize and target the Kashmiris, especially along line of control. So what's happening there now? It seems that they are staging some sort of a new drama in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, right at the lines of the false flag operations.
Faisal, its aim is twofold. One, we have seen that in especially last 30 years, almost 1 million Indian military forces inside the Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir, they have not been able to suppress the Kashmiri freedom struggle. But through this additional deployment, India wants to convey two things. One, additional reinforcements to physically control the aspirations of the people, which I'm sure they will fail, certainly as they have failed in the past. Secondly, want to give a false impression to the world that the normalcy has returned after the actions since 5 August 2019, and a lot of investment is going on, a lot of tourism is going on, and now you see it's almost absolute peace. And in the past, India tried to even convene certain meetings like G20 foreign ministers meeting, etc. So through such actions, one, India wants to further occupy as far as the internal consumption and wants to give a false impression of false stability to the outside people. So therefore, what I feel that this is out of fear that the kind of impression which he's been trying to create for the external audience may not go in vain. So therefore, he is reinforcing those troops. Secondly, we have seen in the past whenever there's a trouble inside the political instability and trouble inside the India, and there's some sort of threat to the government, they always create a situation in Kashmir. They always go for false flag operations, and they always try to create.
That is very important point. Gilani sir, I want to get this from you. That how do you analyze the DG Jammu Police RR Surveillance statement that regional parties means political parties facilitate Pakistan to infiltrate in occupied territory, means to 80 lakh Kashmiris and their so-called political parties, some of the political parties, and or on the same lines what we call the freedom struggle parties like APHC and all others and all factions. So they are all seems to be suspects, and now a ridiculous Indian media push that Pakistan sponsored an Afghanistan trained terrorists entering inside illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the same terrorists to whom India was actually and is sponsoring, financing, abetting and giving them training in Afghanistan against Pakistan to inflict terrorism. It's a ridiculous mantra which coming on from India.
Absolutely, absolutely, Faisal. See, for once, being a Kashmiri from the ground, I will actually like to take credit. Take credit in the sense that Kashmiris have been standing against India not only by words, by the ink of the pen, but also by the barrel of the gun. And India for once has been portraying to the world that everything is quite normal inside the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which it is not. The youth of Jammu and Kashmir, the youth of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir have stood up against India and with weapons in their hand, which is very much their basic and fundamental right. Snatching their freedom from the Indian oppressors is not only guaranteed and backed by the United Nations resolutions, whether it be by the ink of the pen or by the barrel of the gun. So for once, let's give the credit to the people on the ground, that they've been standing even with the most minute and most, I would say, least in quantity of the ammunition.
No doubt about that. We have no doubt about the Kashmiri resilience and their struggle against the arms.
And on the other thing, we must also
acknowledge
that Indian media has always been harpooning on the thing that Kashmiris are with Pakistan or Kashmiris are against the Indian dominance.
But this time we are watching Indian media in a sense what was happened after the Pulwama in 2019, and on the same lines they are going, because do you not think that the Modi always use this jingoism and war mongering particularly against Pakistan and these tactics to win elections?
True.
We witnessed earlier how this regime is actually using innocent Kashmiris in their own soldiers' dead bodies.
Absolutely.
Their own soldiers' dead bodies, the military and the media to win elections. Now, whether this time also the India is preparing for another dummy or puppet elections in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, as Modi's Supreme Court ordered these elections by September 30th, 2024. And Indian Election Commission is going to publish electoral rolls this month on August 20th. So
Absolutely
do you not
true.
think that this hype what they have created is just before this?
I will add on to this that just 4 days back there has been an encounter in the Jammu region of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and for the past 2 months at least we have seen an increase in these encounters and extrajudicial killings as well. So for once we must also understand that India on one hand uses the ballot in its favor, and on the other hand it also uses the bullet in its favor. India has at this point in time blamed the so-called house Negroes, the parties that were actually harping on the tunes of whatever India used to say, be it in 2016 when the pellet guns were used, even in 2019 when India had actually abrogated Article 35 and 370. Many of the local ground parties did support India on that. So at this point in time, India blaming one of the officials that you just named, blaming the local parties who were never representative of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Never. At this point in time, India is trying to claim that elections, if to be held in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, will not be in favor of the Indian Dominion.
We hope so. Dr. Awais, how do you see Modi regime's nefarious designs to destabilize Pakistan? India first trained, financed and equipped Kharjis, BLA, BLF, BRA terrorists to spread terrorism in Pakistan, fueled some of the Pakistani political forces to create instability, destroyed social fabric through social media funding to bash Pakistan, its armed forces, Kashmiri movement to weaken Pakistan economically, lobbied in big capitals to put Pakistan in financial action task force, blacklisting and so on. There are lots of conspiracies hatched by India, and they are still doing it.
Exactly, you are very much right. But before coming to this question, as we have been discussing about the plans of Modi, I'll come back.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I'm going actually towards that one.
In Kashmir, what they want to do is, in fact, they want to legitimize, whatever they have done it.
Yes,
through article revocation and all these things. And this legitimacy, though this is inherently illegitimate thing, they want to install a Hindu chief minister. If you see the composition, the plan that they have done it, and earlier Dr. Waseem was talking about that the way that Modi regime is replicating that Israeli model in Kashmir, the total number of seats are 90, and in 90 scheduled tribe, not the nomination, but the members would be from 9 would be from scheduled tribes, and 7 would be from scheduled caste. And if you see the total composition of that, so there will be a Hindu majority in the house they want to bring, and ultimately the chief minister and rest of the things that they want to do it. So that is the whole plan of demographic change through this assembly. This second thing about India's interfere in Pakistan, as we have discussed earlier, that these killing of 20 individuals, this is the evidence are there. And second thing is,
actually India is playing with
I think in Balochistan, if you
one
see,
is hot pursuit and other is the soft pursuit. So they are using both tactics.
Yes, if you see, this incident or the multiple other incidents, soft and hard both, you will see a number of things which indicate, rather clearly signal India's involvement. Kulbhushan Yadav cases, I think it's something which needs no evidence.
Yes.
So in Balochistan, what is happening?
It's a living evidence.
And whenever there is some, kind of dissenting voices, India tries to, hijack and try to fan further. Try to fan further, so that these cleavages, they could turn it to fault lines in Pakistan. And this is not, we are not saying just based on impressions, because if you see the Modi's speech which he delivered about the dismemberment of Pakistan and creation of Bangladesh, openly Modi admitted that we had our hands in the creation of Bangladesh. So if you see the history, if you see the current happenings, I think there are credible evidences. This pattern is going on. And then the threats are also, if you see the Ishaque and Gilgit-Baltistan, and there was another incident of, a missile that dropped in Pakistani territory.
Yes,
and later on they were saying that that was by mistake.
Definitely.
So if you take all these things together, so I think that India's involvement and India's interference is quite self-evident.
Actually. Dr. Gilani sir, it seems Modi regime has some hidden agenda, as current situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir tells us clearly that India intensified its fake encounters, Modi regime by killing its own troops, making a plea to portray a worst kind of situation in the occupied territories, sending more troops, commandos, paramilitary forces, and using their analysts and media to have terror attacks, news, and on daily basis and analysis, all that there. So, your thoughts? What's actually cooking there?
See, that's what your program today is titled as the trio of Modi, the military, and the Godi media itself. Let's have a few examples when we talk about this. Take an example of the Amarnath Yatra that's taking place right now in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in its final phases. We understand that whenever this kind of a yatra, or previously the Vaishno Devi Yatra took place earlier, India has always infiltrated more troops into the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, essentially increasing their number every year, considering this to be the highest militarized zone that we have. One. Two, we must also understand that over the past 2 months at least, the extrajudicial killings, the encounters, the fake encounters that have been carried out in the Jammu part of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir have been on the rise. On one hand, yes, Indian soldiers did get killed, but on the other hand, we see that India has dubbed the Kashmiri youth as OGWs and taken several of them into the jails under this very title.
Yes.
Let me quote the example of the Chief Minister of Assam as well. Just lately, he has labeled a Muslim university in that very area as the university that promulgates flood jihad. We have heard of love jihad previously, but this is a new terminology coined by them as flood jihad, and he said that BJP is going to go to the judiciary or to whichever authority they think is capable of shutting down that university and taking whoever is in the administration into the jail.
Definitely.
So
unfortunately, this is the Nazi mindset of the Modi regime right now, which is prevailing, and this is the Rashtriya Swayam Civic Sangh Hindutva ideology, what is actually implementing. Dr. Waseem, very brief, very short, if you have, please, because we have run short of time. Pertaining to the past records, Modi has the history of planning fake, fabricated and false flag operations using Indian military extrajudicial killings of the Kashmiris, their dead bodies, to highlight them as terrorists, using Godi media, but put blame on Pakistan and made a case for more killings, military campaign, and so-called surgical strikes or unprovoked firing at the LOC against Pakistan. Do you think that India is thinking at the same lines right now?
I have absolutely no doubt. We have seen the election results when Prime Minister Modi this time got a third term from a very narrow margin. So we have seen his political decline. Now the only thing which can elevate his status is anti-Pakistan rhetoric, what we have seen in the past also. And the best thing, we have seen Pulwama sort of thing, we have seen Mumbai sort of things happening in India. So for him, for his own personal survival and political gains, he has demonstrated in the past, he has very much willpower to do that. So therefore, the Indian media, Indian intelligence and Indian think tanks, everybody is now on one grid to create some sort of flag operation, false flag operations, and further malign Pakistan in order to gain political leverages inside India. So I have absolutely no doubt.
Dr. Waseem, sorry for interruption, but at the same lines at which you responded, what you say about the former Indian commander of the Northern Command, Lieutenant General D.S. Huda, written an article and expressed that punishment is the only way to influence Rawalpindi behavior. The same general who planned fake, fabricated and so-called paper surgical strikes in 2016 without their presence on ground. So this is Huda talking about to shut down the behavior which is there in Pindi.
From the Indian military perspective, the Pakistan military is actually a center of gravity of Pakistan's national unity and national integrity. So therefore, now there's a consistent effort by the Indian, and I would say it's a very calibrated effort, in which they want to malign the Pakistan military to discredit that. Unfortunately, they have not been able to create some sort of wedge between the Pakistani nation and the Pakistan military, although they have tried their best from their perspective. We are a very resilient nation, and Pakistan military is actually a guarantor of Pakistan's national integrity and national sovereignty. While from the Indian side, they have always been trying to do that, they have failed miserably, and this time also they will fail miserably. We have no doubt the Indian media, the Indian military, and the Indian politics, they all have synchronized efforts now against the Pakistani
Dr.
military.
Waseem, because just a day before yesterday, midnight actually, before the Independence Day. So during that Independence Day parade, Army Chief has very categorically said and very rightly said about that there are some of the foreign funded elements who are actually creating a wedge between the people of Pakistan and its military and armed forces. So they are not going to succeed. They will have a worst kind of defeat, no doubt about that. But Indian media and its intelligence agency, RAW, playing a dangerous game right now. They are, by picking up different web materials of Pakistan Army officers, funding social media trolls, generating fake doctored videos and photos and using them at social media against Pakistan, then propagating at the traditional media, leveling false allegations, maligning Pakistan, its armed forces and Kashmiri leadership and freedom movement right now.
We don't expect anything good from the Indian military and from the Indian media and from the Indian politics. And since now they also stand at the crossroads, unfortunately, what they are trying to gain the political leverage from all sides. While the things on ground are not moving as per their desire, so they have now synchronized, initiated a synchronized effort to discredit Pakistan and to further create a wedge between Pakistan's security institutions. They have failed in the past. Pakistan's military and Pakistan's security institutions are mindful of that, and they have taken all safeguards necessary to make sure that Pakistan's integrity and Pakistan's national unity and Pakistan's sovereignty is absolutely guaranteed. And all those nefarious elements, they would stand defeated as they have been defeated in the past. They will continue to be defeated in the future as well. Whether those are the internal elements or the external elements, they would certainly cannot succeed inside Pakistan, because we are a great resilient nation, and we will continue to support our Kashmiri brothers through all diplomatic and moral support, because this is our obligation since 1947, and this is unfinished agenda of that.
Dr. Waseem, you are absolutely right. Dr. Awais, anti-Pakistan bashing and rhetoric brigade on Indian media and social media are actually very active from the last 1-2 months. Extremist anchors, Indian ministers are continuously stressing upon ending ceasefire at line of control, attacking Azad Kashmir and Pakistan. Do you not think that this jingoism and warmongering is actually building up with a premeditated design against Pakistan and Kashmiris?
Exactly. This is, the strategy, Indian strategy, though nefarious it is. It started in after 2014, and it was publicly announced by Ajit Doval, who was the security advisor. And he said that we need to adopt defensive-offensive doctrine, and defensive-offensive doctrine means that we need to attack the epicenter according to them. You know, in Pakistan, and surgical strikes they planned, and they were of the view that we need to exploit, these were their words, Pakistan's vulnerabilities,
yes,
and Pakistan's underbelly. And this is something which is which is public, and that has been stated by India's national security advisor. And the things that we are witnessing now, this is basically the continuation of that. And Pakistan needs to take up this issue internationally, and Pakistan needs to take up in the concerned quarters that how that warmongering or jingoistic attitude is formally institutionalized by India against Pakistan.
Definitely, definitely. So when Dr. Sahab was saying so, Dr. Gilani, if very short, Pakistan just recently during Yawm-e-Istihsal, Pakistani Foreign Office has given a very comprehensive briefing to the international community, the ambassadors and high commissioners residing in Pakistan. So Pakistan is very cognizant about what is happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and what the Indian designs are. But why international community is not taking things seriously? Because now South Asia is right at the brink of any sort of a nuclear flashpoint.
I absolutely agree, and I will just give you a short answer to that. See, what's the most important thing for when you ask this question from a Kashmiri from the ground? What we believe and what we understand and expect from Pakistan is a continuous hammering of whatever India is carrying out in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Make dossiers, make documents, tell the world, and ensure your claim still exists even after 77 years to it. Secondly, let the Kashmiris take the driving seat. Let the Kashmiris speak and make and tell their stories to the world. Let the world know what a common Kashmiri feels when he undergoes all these human rights violations and organized war crimes committed by India.
Yes.
And the third most important point, let Pakistan send envoys to whichever smallest country of the world, because every country counts in the United Nations as a vote. Let envoys be educated, let them know what Kashmir is, what Pakistan is, what exactly is the genesis of this conflict. Let them know how humanity is suffering inside the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Do these three things. That is all that a common Kashmiri wants from Pakistan.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Thank you very much, Dr. Gilani sahab. Thank you very much for your presence. Dr. Awais, thank you very much for your presence in the studios. Thank you very much, Dr. Waseem Ishaque sir, for being online and very candid and very elaborative views. Thank you very much for that. Viewers, as you have just listened to our panelists, India is actually exploiting the Kashmir situation politically and to have political gains. Indian Modi regime right now is using its military and the Godi media for its nefarious designs, and unfortunately the Indian military is falling victim of the Modi's political designs. International double standards encourage India actually to commit atrocities, war crimes and genocide within the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India is at the footsteps of Israel, no doubt about that, as India is snatching all kinds of freedoms, businesses, lands, their houses of the Kashmiri people. And unfortunately, almost one Indian soldier is on one or two Kashmiris. This is the height of the Indian occupation in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So the situation is getting grim because of the Modi regime's Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh's Hindutva agenda, and that is now prevailing over there. They ever thought about any sort of a peace in South Asia. They are always perpetuating this warmongering and the war drums which are right now going on at the Indian media. But if any sort of false flag operations or any sort of misadventure planned by India, which seems at the Indian media that they are always pushing their government for that, Pakistani armed forces are fully capable of defending its motherland, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and also our Kashmiri brothers and sisters. So we can thwart any sort of threat, whatever that is and whatever that will be. But the international community, the United Nations, the UN Human Rights Council, along with that the permanent five, the big countries, they have to feel their responsibility, as South Asia is always at the brink of war. South Asia is always a nuclear flashpoint. So international community must have to think that we have to bring a long-term peace and stability in the region. If we want it, then we have to resolve the long-standing issue of Kashmir at any cost. This is today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.